From the pro-treaty majority in the Dáil, a cabinet was chosen. Griffith became president, with Collins as his right-hand man and the real leader of the treaty party. Others who'd risked their lives for the ideal of an all-Ireland republic couldn't bring themselves to settle for less. De Valera and other Republicans repudiated the treaty. If the treaty were accepted, De Valera told one meeting, the fight for a republic would go on. They would get Irish freedom, even if they had to wade through Irish blood to do it. Michael Collins defended the treaty to which he'd reluctantly put his name. Think, what have I got for Ireland? Something which she's wanted these past 700 years. This treaty is the first real step for Ireland. If people will only remember that, the first real step. In June 1922, the country went to the polls. It was a fierce campaign. The pro-treaty party won a convincing majority. But already the extremists in the IRA had decided that they must resort to force, as Pearse had done. They seized strong points in Dublin. A small group under Rory O'Connor occupied the forecourts. It was 1816 were seen as the successors to those who, in earlier centuries, had risen in rebellion against it, and whose after 1916 over again. Republican snipers menaced the streets of Dublin, but this time the authorities were Irish. On June the 28th, 1922, Collins brought up artillery and bombarded the forecourts. The leaders of the Republican resistance there set fire to the building before they were captured and imprisoned. "60 people were killed in that week of fighting, Irishmen killed by Irishmen. The saddest phase of the Troubles had begun. Civil war spread through the country. At first, the Republican irregulars gained control in the south and west. But the Free State Army began to hunt them down, much as the Black and Tans had hunted down the IRA 2 years before. The same ugly pattern unfolded: raids and counter-raids, ambushes and reprisals. But this time, brother was fighting brother. The funerals began again. In August 1922, thousands queued to file past the body of Arthur Griffith, worn out by his long work for his country, though he was barely 50. Collins was at his graveside. A week later, Collins too was dead. From Griffith's funeral, he went to command operations against the Republicans. He was caught in an ambush and killed. The Free State forces, enraged, began to meet terror with terror, as the Tans had done. Republican supporters were rounded up and jailed, and as reprisals for continued killings, Rory O'Connor and other leaders were shot to become martyrs in their turn. But this time, public opinion was on the side of authority, and force prevailed. In the autumn and winter of 1922, Free State troops mopped up the last Republican resistance. The government's control was re-established throughout the country. In May 1923, De Valera ordered his followers to cease fire. At last, the Irish Free State found an uneasy peace. The troubles were over. Eamon de Valera, the rebel sentenced to death, lived to become, 40 years later, President of the Republic of Ireland. Could that republic have been won peacefully? Was it needless death, after all? Yeats asked of Easter week. And he answered,
I write it out in a verse. MacDonough and MacBride and Connolly and Pearse, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed. Changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born.